Welcome to the Idea to Launch Show. My name is Lisa Zufall, and I will be your host today. And in studio with me is a very special guest, Julie Finch. Before we start talking about all the things that Julie knows, because I tell you, there's a whole slew, I would like to give a special shout out to our sponsor, Studio Americana. The studio that we are in here in Golden Valley is the Twin Cities' premier studio audio facility for content creators, comprehensive services for creating podcasts and live streams. They have professional consulting, so if you're wondering if or should or why, you should just talk to Ian. Turnkey voiceover studios, audio editing for any level of project. They are fully staffed by experienced broadcast professionals, and they are awesome. They can host live or recorded shows. You can communicate with your guests or engage your audience with interactive phone services and call screening. You can also do live webinars, and those are pretty hot these days. So if you want to do one that's professional, give Ian a call, and you can call him at 612-272-7970. Again, call Ian at Studio Americana, 612-272-7970. And I highly encourage you to just come out and take a look at this beautiful studio. You're going to love it. With that being said, I'd like to introduce Julie Finch, who is an amazing attorney, who is super fun because we were just talking about oysters. And how many times do you talk to an attorney about oysters? Not often. But Julie founded Finch Law over 10 years ago as a firm focused on making law accessible to the serious entrepreneur. She's been a lawyer for over 30 years, and she is one of the original computer lawyers in the country. Shut up, really?
Really? I'm old.
Let's talk about that. Can I just stop right here and talk?
Sure.
What do you mean?
Well, it is part of my story, but when I was in law school, I started working for Honeywell as a law clerk. And it was the mid-'80s. It was back in the day when nobody knew.
Mainframes.
God, yes. And my husband trained as a software engineer. So I actually got the job at Honeywell. Not because I was a brilliant lawyer, I got to tell you, I was a law student, but because I knew that the source code and object code were different things, and that Ada was the name of a person who invented the language, or in part invented the language, not just the name of the language. And so the guy I was interviewing with was like, okay, you're in.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I was licensing software globally in the mid-'80s when almost nobody was, and we didn't know what it was.
I always learn something. That's fantastic. How cool is that? So anyways, having started practicing when a portable computer weighed 70 pounds, yes,
That's true. It was a compact computer.
Yeah.
I was one of the few people in my law school class that had one at home, because when I said I want to go to law school, my husband, the software engineer, said, well, you need a computer. And it was.
You took it to class with you.
No. But it weighed 70 pounds and had a smaller screen than my iPad.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. That's so cool. She managed a trademark portfolio for Honeywell. So you did that too?
Oh, yeah.
Of course. Why not?
I'm not an engineer, but I bond with marketing really well.
She's been an assistant attorney general for the state of Minnesota, of course, and a partner at Hinshaw and Culbertson.
Yep.
And at Ryder Bennett. I've never heard of these law firms.
Well, Ryder Bennett dissolved about 11 years ago.
Okay.
But they had been one of the largest law firms in the 5-state area.
Of course.
And we have a former Chief Justice of the Minnesota Supreme Court that was a partner there.
Wow.
Tim Pawlenty, our former governor, came out of there. So they were a seriously big, seriously good law firm.
That's amazing. She loves teaching and coaching, of course, because I've learned so much from this woman. Having honored her skills running the honed her skills running the Mitchell Hamline Business Law Clinic?
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't know that either. We just talk about shopping and oysters. I've learned it all about her.
And horses.
And as an adjunct instructor and guest lecturer at the University of St. Catherine and the University of St. Thomas. She is a very, very busy lady, and I am just honored to have you in studio with me. This is, wow.
Thank you.
You're going to be at the How Conference. You're one of the presenters.
Ma'am. Yeah.
You have a breadth of information.
Yeah, well, because I'm unemployable by anybody other than myself right now. But it is also what's really fun about working in the entrepreneurial startup space. There's always something new.
Right.
Right.
It's evolving so quickly from tech to marketing to just the businesses that are bubbling up.
Well, the business that I run, having the law practice that I have that has the scope of kind of geographic reach that I have, you couldn't have done this 30 years ago when I started practicing. And we needed those mainframes, and we had fax machines and fax rooms. And if you needed information from the field, you had to like call somebody and wait for them to mail it to you. Not email it, mail it.
Yeah, that's painful. But that's when stamps were like 2 cents.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. So, wow. You didn't start wanting to go to law school. You wanted to be an accountant?
Yeah. Well, it seemed like a good idea.
I don't know. How do those two work together? Or they're completely separate, aren't they?
Not when you're in business. When I went to college, and there were no lawyers in my family, really.
Okay.
What do
you mean, really?
Well, because I came to discover after I decided to go to law school that my mom's cousin's husband was a lawyer for one of the railroads. I just never knew it.
Oh, wow.
So technically he was, but I just didn't know it.
Right.
But when I went to law school, and even when I went to undergraduate, I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I ended up going to take the LSAT when I was a senior in college because my roommate, who was going to be an accountant, was going to take the LSAT, and then she was going to go to law school. And I was kind of like, well, why not try it? And I went and took the test, and I didn't do so well.
Oh, really?
I got to tell you. Sometimes, and this is important for your entrepreneurs out there to know, sometimes we don't always succeed on the first go around.
Right.
So I went and managed one of the St. Paul Book and Stationery stores.
Okay.
It was the office supply store in town before the Office Maxes of the world, right?
I remember. That was, Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So, I'm thinking that was not such a good fit for me. And so I went and took the exam to go to law school after that. And I'm still half thinking and wondering if I should do accountancy. So anyway, I ended up in law school, and my friend who was going to be the lawyer ended up being the accountant.
I love that.
But we talked about this. I ended up working with Honeywell. And so not only did I end up going to law school, I ended up working in a field that I'd never even heard of before I got there, and working in an industry that was really in its infancy.
How did you do it? I mean, how did you wrap your arms around what needed to be done?
Well, kind of like I wrap my arms around what needs to be done today. And that is part of being an entrepreneur. Every morning you get up and you say, okay, what does this service look like? And what is it going to take to get it done?
Yep.
And who do I need to help me get it done?
Right.
And so when I look at the practicing law side of things, really easy. I know what needs to be done there. When I look at the planning for a conference or a podcast, my head wants to explode. And I'm like, oh, crap, who can help me with this?
I get you. We are all, I believe, given gifts of strength in certain areas. And the reason why we're not all given the same gift of strength in all areas is so that we can help one another.
No, I'd absolutely agree with that.
And as an entrepreneur, you do not know all things that you need to know. Like when I first spoke with Julie, and I keep learning every time I talk with her. So let me see here. Oh, so we're going to talk about... You've been in the technology, you've been in marketing, you've spent a lot of time. Now you have your own business, and you really have an entrepreneurial heart. I do. Your soul, from your story, your soul is really, let's hit the ground running, let's figure it out as we go, let's pull the pieces together.
Yep.
And so now you're serving entrepreneurs and small business owners.
Yeah.
In what capacity?
In a variety of capacities. One of the things that people don't always think about or understand is what business lawyers really do.
Yes.
My daughter's a copywriter, and so she gets questions from people saying, "Would you write my contract for me?" And her eyes bug out, and she says, "No, you really want to talk to my mom." But at the heart of it, what business lawyers do is they help you define risk and mitigate it. And that sounds really complicated. And I guarantee you risk never comes
Sounds really expensive.
Yeah, it's not it's oftentimes more expensive not to do it right the first time than it is to try to fix it on the back end. And risk never comes with a little sign over the top of your head or, stamped across the piece of
forehead,
paper saying, I this is risky, this is risky. There's so much information out there that anymore it's really hard to tell what's good information and what's bad information or what's partial information.
Right.
So let me give you some examples.
I love it.
So I'm a new business owner. The first thing I do is I peel my eyes back and choose a name for my business.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's where we got to start. And I love my name. And I go to the Secretary of State's office and I create an LLC because there's little fill-in-the-blank forms there that I can do it. And I launch my website and I've kind of planned everything. And a week later, I get a cease and desist letter from somebody saying I have to change my name. Well, the risk, and that's where somebody like me comes in, the risk was actually in choosing that name, but then not searching it to see if somebody else might actually own it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because just because you could buy a domain name doesn't mean you actually own the right to use the name.
I own a lot of domain names.
Yeah. Just saying. Doesn't mean you have the right to use any of them. So that was risky.
Yeah.
And it happens more and more often because the internet makes it so easy for people to find you. And if you do a good job promoting yourself, if somebody else thinks they have better rights, you will hear from them. And so one is to do the search piece, but take it the next step and register it and claim it so that if you get into a situation, you're actually in a position that is easy and inexpensive to defend.
And what do you mean? Register it.
So
Claim it.
you can register it at the state level or you can register at the federal level. If you register at the federal level, you are going to pick up rights across the country. If you register at the state level, you're going to pick up rights in the state of
Just
Minnesota.
in the state.
Correct.
Okay.
You also have the ability to do some things at the federal office that you can't do at the state. So you can file intent to use marks at the federal trademark office.
What does that mean?
That means if I choose my name today and I file on it, I'm effectively reserving rights on it because it may be 6 or 9 months before I get my website launched.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
And the business really gets going. But if I didn't file, then somewhere between that point of time in which I cleared it and the point in time I started to use it, somebody else could have jumped in and used it first or registered it first or filed on it first. And then I still might have to be changing my name. It's a relatively complicated system, even though there are forms that you can do online. Those forms have a lot of law behind them, and it's really easy to answer the questions incorrectly or do it in a way that creates problems for yourself.
So it's best to bring in somebody who knows what they're doing.
It is.
And they can translate what your needs are to what you need to put on those worksheets. No, those forms.
Yeah, and oftentimes that is how I describe myself to people. I am the translator. It's my job to learn what your business is and what it wants to do, and take that and put it into the existing structures that we have, whether that's language structures or business structures. Do you want to be an LLC, an entity, whatever, but to use those to make your objectives happen.
Isn't that amazing?
Well, I think it is. No, I love doing that.
She's been doing it for
30 years.
30 years.
And that's really where I have always done it best, is putting the new stuff in the marketplace.
What blows my mind is that you're out here helping entrepreneurs and startups when this kind of knowledge and this, your experience could be highly paid at any law firm. I mean, basically you could probably name your price to go anywhere with this kind of knowledge of
Well,
what you have.
I like to think that I could, but here's what just gets me out of bed in the morning. There are about 3% of the women-owned businesses in the country that ever break $1 million in sales a year. So think about that.
That's depressing.
That's a very small number.
Yep.
I represent 8, and I have been with them since day one. So that is what is really fun, is to find the people and the products and watch them grow and help them grow. And that, I'm old enough that I get to have some fun in my job.
I love that. And she does have fun, people.
I do.
So you protect me. When I come in and I say, hey, Julie, I want to start a business, you will help me figure out, can I use this name or not? And then we'll put a reserve on it. Would you recommend, when do you recommend going to register federally versus locally or in your state?
If you have the budget for it and it's available and it meets the criteria, you should always go for the federal registration.
Okay. How
Right.
much is going for the federal?
Well, I give people a budget of about $1,000 to get a federal registration.
Okay.
And that'll include a knockout search if I'm doing it.
Yep.
And the filing fee for a single class of goods and services.
Okay.
So your filing fee is $225
Okay.
at a minimum on that.
Okay. Wow. I thought when you said a budget, I thought you were talking like tens of thousands.
Well, that's why it's really important to get the numbers.
That's why I had to ask, because, what I'm finding is a lot of entrepreneurs or small business owners are like, well, it's too expensive. I'm not going to get an attorney because it's way too expensive for me. It's like putting your numbers together, your financial numbers together.
Yep.
It takes too much time. The eyes roll back in your head and you just don't want to deal with it. But this is something that you should be dealing with right from the get-go, correct?
Yeah, because it literally can be a pay me now or a pay me later situation.
And how much does it cost if somebody says you cannot cease and desist, you cannot use that name, you have to change it?
Well, at a minimum, you can figure that it's going to be 2 hours to investigate the claim, talk to the client, and write a response letter that is essentially going to, well, I shouldn't say that, where you might actually say, I'm going to give up the name. You just don't want to get sued any further.
Mm-hmm.
But you can figure a minimum of 2 hours of time. Well, that's between $500 and $600 for most lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
So you could have taken that money and put it into registering and actually knowing that it's yours.
Right. I wish I would have met her sooner.
Well, and I have had cases where it has run into the 6 figures in damage claims and attorney's fees and the insurance carrier's involvement.
The biggest scenario that I see is if you don't register your name and then suddenly your business takes off.
Yep.
And somebody sees that and they go and they do a federal register on your name.
And those situations really happen. Most of the trademark issues that come up are accidental infringements.
Okay.
But then you also have the bad actor. And the more successful you are, the more likely you are to attract a bad actor.
Okay.
And those will be very expensive.
Yeah.
We can probably get it back. It's just going to be a lot more expensive.
Okay. And what's the difference between registered and trademark and copyright?
So trademarks and copyrights are 2 different kinds of rights.
Okay.
In the global piece of intellectual property, that's like calling something a car. And then under that, we have Chevys and Fords and Impala. Break it down. So in the global world of intellectual property, you have trademarks. And think of that as your footprint in the marketplace.
Okay.
That's who the consumer knows you as.
Okay.
We have copyrights. Copyright protects creative expression.
Mm-hmm.
And that means it's going to cover things like this podcast. It's going to cover artwork. It's going to cover software, music. We can have more than one copyright in the same piece of things,
Okay.
but it's a whole different set of laws. We have patents, and patents are going to protect inventions. And again, it's a whole different set of laws. And then we usually...
Do you do patents?
I do not.
Okay. I thought I just
But
asked 'cause
I
you
have
brought up the word. That's
Yep. No,
fair.
I have to drop it in there, though, because it is part of that universe of intellectual property.
Okay.
And then the other piece we tend to think of is trade secret information,
Okay.
which is, again, a whole different set of laws.
Why? Why do they have so many different sets of laws?
Well, because
Can't
writing...
you change that?
Can I change that?
Make it simpler.
It is really kind of crazy. And I'm going to go back to that whole trademark piece for a minute, because especially in the U.S., our laws have grown up organically, and we are based on precedent. So we write the law, but it never covers every possible scenario. And then somebody has to throw in some judgment call. And so then the next time a similar situation comes up, we're always arguing, well, is it more or less similar to the judgment call that was made?
Right.
We're trying to work under the statute. So what happened in the branding area is we historically had trademarks which covered products, things like pens and pencils and desks. But service marks were not protected at all.
I just heard about service marks.
Yeah. Well, and you and I provide services, right?
Yeah.
This podcast is an entertainment service. This legal services are a service, but historically we didn't protect service marks. And so eventually that got brought into the fold, but that's why you see a little TM to mean a trademark, an SM to mean a service mark, and the R in the circle means that it's a federally registered mark.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yep. But that's how it has all come about. And if you think it gets confusing trying to deal just within the laws within the U.S., try looking at some of this stuff globally.
No way. Oh, did I say that really fast?
Not only did you say it fast, you said it out loud. There are people listening to this show that want to sell product outside the U.S. I am
How
sure
do
of
they
it.
do that? Do you help them with that?
I do.
Oh,
Remember, I started at Honeywell. That's
Yeah.
what I did.
Yeah.
Global software licensing programs.
so how do you even begin to do that outside of the United States? Because don't the other countries have their own rules and regulations?
Yeah. And we have to know them. Actually, what we end up doing a lot of times is finding good partners in country that will handle a lot of the logistics.
Okay.
Right? So think about a clothing manufacturer.
Yep.
We might manufacture a product in Mexico. It gets shipped to the U.S. We might manufacture in China. It gets shipped to the U.S. You have to clear customs with things. It then has to go from the border crossing to wherever your point of distribution is.
Yep.
So you have to decide if you are going to distribute directly to a retail outlet.
Okay.
Are they bringing it to a warehouse? And then we distribute farther. I mean, it goes all across the board. The laws that you might be looking at, you're going to have contract documents with your manufacturing partner, and you're going to be really clear with them, not just about what the goods are going to look like. You're going to have them send you samples because they might forget otherwise, and things don't always translate well. Remember, we're working in different languages.
Right.
So
Right.
clarity is a good thing, and seeing actually what the items are, huge. There are people who specialize in setting you up to work with factories in various parts of the world.
Yep.
Some of them do a phenomenal job, and it's well worth the investment to work with them. Some of them not so much. But we have contracts there. We have all the insurance issues and insurance coverage issues for transportation on the seas. We have all of the issues getting things cleared through customs, and then all of the transportation insurance carrier stuff coming to the factory. Then you have the contracts with your retail
How do you
outlets.
remember all these things?
I'm really good at making lists.
So
And I don't remember everything. Let's be really clear. I work with really smart people, and they know their business, but I've been doing this a really long time,
Yep.
so I can help them make their lists too.
So I have a product.
Yep.
I want to get it manufactured overseas.
Yep.
I can call you, Julie, to help me get the ball rolling and figure out what it is that I need to know that I might not even have
Probably.
considered.
There are industries where I know more than others.
Yep.
Yeah. I can't say I can do every single product
But
out
if
there,
you
but
do-
I know a lot.
If you don't know that industry, do you have contacts then that you
I
can
do.
help guide them to that
I do.
person?
I do.
Because I think right now there seems, and I could be wrong, but for me there seems to be a lot of individuals who have physical products that they want to get manufactured. They're finding that it's too expensive to do it here in the United States at this point, so they want to send at least pieces of it overseas to get manufactured and come back. But there's a whole slew of stuff that you need to have in place in order to do that efficiently and successfully. Correct?
Yes. Yes.
I've heard horror stories of people sending things overseas to be manufactured only for it to get knocked off. They never get the product and it ends up online.
Well, and that goes to some of these intellectual property protections. The reality is if you are working with a lot of factories, if you are working with a number of the various factories, you can expect to have knockoffs. And when you are brand new starting off, you don't have a lot of leverage with these folks.
Right.
The longer you work with somebody, and the businesses, your manufacturers are like you in the sense they would rather work with people that they have a working relationship with. So if you can establish a good relationship with a good supplier, it helps tremendously. And the trick is finding the supplier. But there will be knockoffs, which is where you get into trademark registration, right? If you have a federally registered trademark and you know there is infringing goods with your mark coming in at the border, you can have customs stop it.
Okay.
So there's things around that. That's where it becomes important to look at whether or not there's something patentable in what you're doing. And sometimes it's just a matter of you have to just go and be uniquely out or be uniquely you out in the marketplace and really know your brand, and you don't worry about the other stuff.
Okay.
You can never win the race to the bottom in pricing. So I don't even go there. Figure out really what your brand is for your product and work that.
Okay. We have to go back to service marks.
Okay.
I need to know more about service marks and why do you need a service mark versus a trademark? You said if you like a podcast is a service. So why would I put a service mark on my podcast?
Because that's what this is, right?
Okay.
If I like that we're like looking at each other going, what are you talking about? So we can claim brand identification rights around the services that we provide, just the same way we claim brand identification around
Really?
products. Really?
Because there are a whole heck of a lot of entrepreneurs out there that are offering services,
I know.
me being one of them. And, what's trademark, service mark?
So for your purposes,
Yep.
trademark and service mark get used interchangeably.
Okay.
When we decided that service marks really were legitimate brand identifiers out there, we merged those laws. So really, when you listen to lawyers like myself talk, we'll say service mark or trademark because we want to be completely legally accurate in what we say.
Got it.
But it's the same law. So
Okay.
McDonald's,
I was
it's
like,
a service mark for restaurants if I am 100% correct in the way I say it.
interesting. I had no idea. Are you guys learning as much as I'm learning? So we talked about what it means to protect your business, but you have an example in here, and I'd like to share it with the audience. Someone in your company signs a document from a photographer who does a photo shoot for you.
Yep.
Yeah? The document gave you 1 year to use the photo, and then you had to stop. This is high risk if you don't understand the document or have a process in place to destroy the photo after a year. 2 years later, someone in your company launches a national ad campaign using the photo. You now have to deal with allegations of copyright infringement.
I don't make this stuff up. This is the first thing I have to tell you and your audience. This is based on not just a real case that I've been involved with, but I know of at least 3 others around the country. We actually have people out there that are called copyright trolls, and they set up licensing agreements that they are intending that you breach so that they can claim extra damages and attorney's fees in a lawsuit. So photography of any kind is high risk unless you really, really, really know where it came from. Pulling something off of Google Images, unless you've actually traced back the image source, you can get that cease and desist letter.
Okay.
And there's a number of small companies and nonprofits that because what happens is we now have technology that lets photographers crawl the internet looking for those images that they think are theirs.
Right.
And some of that's legit. I've got nothing against photographers. Their business is really hard when everybody's walking around with a semi-decent camera in their picture, in their back pocket in their phone.
Right.
And there's opportunities for them to create revenue streams from licensing. But there are also ones where they're really looking to make law by filing lawsuits. And that's how it happens. So those things that people think aren't real contracts, it's just a piece of paper and I signed it. Trust me, it's probably a real contract. And if it says you're going to stop using it, you're probably going to have to stop using it or face that lawsuit.
Right. Wow. So here's the next one. Your web developer gives you privacy terms. This is usually high risk because the person in the business responsible for implementing those terms didn't read them. You now face a lawsuit because your business collected personal information which it sold to third parties. The claim is that you violated the privacy policy that said that you would never give your customers information to third parties for advertising purposes. This happens all the time.
I know. This is why it's an example. And you really should be talking not just to your web developer about what appropriate privacy policy is for your business. You should be talking to counsel on it because it also is going to matter if you are primarily selling in the U.S. or if you're selling in the EU. The EU has some very different regulations that are coming into play. And if that's a piece of your market, you need to consider what they require, not just what your home state requires. I love web developers. I work for many web developers. And they want to give you something because they know their own customers aren't going to go out and look at this stuff either. And so they're giving you tools to work from. But as web developers, most of them think that it is really a bad idea to collect personal information and say that you're going to sell it to advertisers or use it in a way where you might give it to your partners or your sponsors because they're thinking like a technologist, not necessarily like the marketing department. And so I will guarantee you they are likely to give you terms and conditions that say you're never going to give the information to anybody. Most small businesses, I shouldn't say that. For some small businesses, that's absolutely true. But for others, completely untrue.
Right.
Now, they are going to go out and find sponsorships and partners and people to work with, and they may look at that as a revenue stream.
Right.
And it's not that either model is good or bad. It's just that the one thing I am sure that a third party looking at that is going to expect, they're going to expect you as the company to abide by your own terms and conditions.
Right.
And there are cases of people getting into trouble, not because of their behavior, but because their own terms and conditions said it was something else.
Right.
And then the other thing is, if your website is targeting children, there's a whole nother set of rules and regs that have to come into play.
Okay.
So, and it's the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, and there's specialized things that you have to comply with.
Right. So many things. It'll make your head spin.
So
So
many
just call
things.
Julie. That's what I say.
Well, but this is my point. The stuff that if you've never had experience working with business lawyers, you don't actually know that your business lawyer can help you with this stuff.
Right.
And oftentimes it's a 5 to 10 minute phone call.
Yep.
These are not big projects.
Yeah.
if you just taken the time to develop the relationship beforehand,
Yep.
and then it's a phone call or an email.
So let me ask you this, because you do have different events that you have going on periodically to help small business owners.
I do.
Do you have one that's coming up where they can connect with you?
I do. I am going to be speaking at the How Conference, October 26th. I'm glad you know the date.
I've had to write it several times.
But we have a phenomenal panel of experts, all of whom are going to give people real practical tips and tricks on just how to move their business a little bit forward.
Yep.
And it's always the stupidest stuff in life that trips you up.
Right.
Right? So if you're moving, because we moved a couple years ago, it was not knowing where the closest grocery store was that was the greatest frustration.
Right.
Something I always tell people, if you want to try to do some things yourself, whether it is the Secretary of State's office or the trademark, you want to go to the website that ends with .gov, and they are not the first ones that come up in the search results. The paid ads are all the third parties who want to sell you services.
Yep.
And some of them are things you may not need to pay for.
Right.
They may be a bad fit. So if you really want to know what stuff is, go to the .gov website.
Or call Julie.
Or call Julie.
I suggest you just call her. So if somebody just is sitting out there going, oh my gosh, this is such great information, I have even more questions, how do I get a hold of Julie?
Okay. Well, the easiest way to get a hold of me is email or a phone call.
Okay.
So jfinch at finch-law.com. That's Finch with an F, just like the bird. Or you can call me at 651-261-8409.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today.
I'm so happy to
This
be
was
here.
awesome. I learned so much. I hope you did too. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Idea to Launch, and we will see you next week. If you like this episode, please like, share, comment below, and we look forward to seeing you soon.